Good morning. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. The Raisina dialogue is very important for all of us to express our ideas and views. As far as concern, our relations is very important to maritime security and enhance our economic relations. IORA is an organization. We can boost our relations furthermore. IORA has adopted resolutions and framework in last year. It was very important. We can use those resolutions according to international laws. We must respect international laws. I think all of you can understand the present situation of the globe. It is a good example to us, the necessity of such type of regional organization and strengthening such type of organization. Therefore, we have to work together using those organizations. Our neighboring country is India. India is doing a great job, and the Indian presidency of IORA organization can play a good role because India has many resources, human resources and material resources also as a neighboring large country. We hope under the presidency of India will play a big role, and we wish all the best to India, and we are with IORA, and with the support of that framework and the main principles of IORA, we can work together with the support of all other countries. Thank you very much.
Minister Maritime.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. Sometimes when there's a discussion about Australia's role in the world, we are overwhelmingly perceived as a Pacific nation. But indeed, we have the longest Indian Ocean coastline amongst all Indian Ocean littorals, and it is a very significant focus for our nation and for our governments. We see the region as very important. We've enhanced partnerships in security, in diplomacy and in economic terms over the years, including being part of the comprehensive strategic partnership that Australia and India signed with my good friend, the Minister for External Affairs at the time. I made the decision, for example, to open an Australian diplomatic mission in the Maldives, further acknowledging the importance of the region. It's fair to say, and the good minister from Sri Lanka mentioned IORA, that during the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years, I would personally say there have been some frustrations with IORA as an organisation over time, but it has grown in effectiveness and in its breadth. And I'm very pleased to see India at the helm of IORA. I think, though, that funding constraints and the challenges that that presents are likely to continue to further challenge its capacity to grow its influence and its ability to deliver outcomes in what is an increasingly complex strategic environment. We only need to look at today's media glancingly to know just how complex that strategic environment is. And so this region is not immune. From Australia's perspective, in our 2024 National Defence Strategy, the government prioritises explicitly the Northeast Indian Ocean. And I think I'd also like to note that the advent of AUKUS, the partnership between Australia, the United Kingdom and the United States, places an even greater Australian strategic focus on the Indian Ocean region and on our own west coast, frankly. We are significantly developing facilities at HMAS Stirling in Western Australia to support AUKUS and in the Cocos-Keeling Islands, which will enhance our maritime domain awareness capability and capacity and, importantly, our ability to work with partners and allies in the region. On my way here to Raisina, and always a pleasure, I had the opportunity to read a recent paper from the United States Studies Centre in Sydney. It's written by a Maitri scholar, and I remember announcing the Maitri scholars with the Minister in Melbourne in 2022. Her name is Rushali Saha, and she has written a very interesting report through the Maitri Scholar process entitled Securing the Indian Ocean, Elevating the India-Australia Maritime Partnership. There's a great podcast that goes with it. I'm not here to promote the United States Studies Centre, but it is a very pertinent and timely observation, particularly with its focus on non-traditional security challenges as well, and I would highly recommend that to those who are interested. I look forward to participating in the conversation with colleagues.
Minister Dhananjay Ramphul of Mauritius.
Thank you, Pritika. As you rightly said, that we are witnessing an unprecedented geopolitical situation, and unfortunately, the Indian Ocean is not the perpetrator of what is happening in the world, but they are the most affected. That's very unfortunate. And this is where I think there needs to be better collaboration with member states sharing the littoral coastal part of the Indian Ocean. They should regroup together. And this is where the IORA becomes important as a platform. With India acceding to the chairmanship of the IORA and India having the maritime expertise. For example, you have the Information Fusion Center that has been set up, I think, in 2018. That will help for better maritime awareness domain in the region. And there should be also collaboration with all these institutions, like I think in Madagascar you have a similar structure. In Seychelles as well, you have a similar structure. So there need to be, I think, collaboration between all these centers so that there are real-time information sharing to ensure safe navigation in the Indian Ocean. Now, but there are opportunities as well that can bring to the countries of the region, right? And we have to explore those opportunities. We need to turn our vulnerabilities into opportunities as well, right? You have, for example, the blue economy, which is important. Green investment, blue investment, technology sharing and all. But as I've said, there need to be collaboration between all these countries for us to make this place a secure place in the world.
Thank you. Minister Barry for the Seychelles.
Hello. Thank you very much for inviting me to the panel. Seychelles is a small island developing state, having a strategic role and position within the Indian Ocean, and we are conscious of the fact that being small and beautiful does not necessarily mean that you would not be impacted by what goes on around you. When the waters are turbulent, you have to keep the ship stable and keep sailing safely to protect your people, to protect your country. And that is why we have developed our own resilience as a small island state to ensure that in terms of our foreign policy, We are a non-aligned country that does not get entangled in the battles between the bigger players in the world. But at times like this, we can see that even if you do not interfere in what's happening, that you are in one way or another impacted. And the responsibility of the government is to ensure that we have the frameworks in place nationally, but both at senior government level, at the professional and technical level, and at the whole society level, to monitoring what's happening around us and adopting the preemptive and responsive measures that will protect the population. So this is our first mandate to the people, to make sure that there are stocks of food and essentials and fuel, medication for the population for a reasonably sufficient period of time, and at the same time continue to beef up the resources. We also have a duty internationally to also collaborate with partners in the region for us to to develop our structures, our frameworks, which have been referred to by colleagues who have spoken before me. This is what I'd like to say for the time being. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Dr. S. Jaishankar from India.
Thank you, Palki. What I'd like to do perhaps is begin with a somewhat long view, and I'm sure we will discuss the more contemporary developments as we get into the further conversation. On the long view, let me make three big points. One, that the Indian Ocean region, it's an ecosystem. It had, there's a book many years ago written called Empires of the Monsoons. So there was a whole monsoon-driven ecosystem, centuries of exchanges. And what had happened was the colonial period actually broke it up. So the Indian Ocean, perhaps much more than many other parts of the world, is in the process of a recovery and a rebuilding. Individual states are doing that, but the whole region, in a way, if you look today at the restoration of the trade patterns, the restoration of connectivity, we are trying to rebuild our connectivity towards the east through Myanmar to Southeast Asia. We are rebuilding our connectivity to the west. We are rebuilding our connectivity to the west through IMEC into the Arabian Peninsula and further through the international north-south transport corridor to Iran and through Iran into Eurasia. So you have this whole rebuilding process underway, which I think is one feature of Indian Ocean we need to recognize. Its connectivity, its mobility, its trade patterns. It is also the modern manifestation of an integrated ecosystem. The second point I would make is a lot of this would happen. It requires hard work. It can't be done by sloganeering. It can't be done by just throwing out an idea and leaving it out there. And I would say in the last decade, Indian diplomacy, in a way, we have invested an enormous amount into that recovery and rebuilding process. For the first time, you have an integrated view of the Indian Ocean, Sagar or now Mahasagar. It begins with very basic stuff, even diplomacy. There were countries in the Indian Ocean where we had not had a high-level visit for decades. Australia, Sri Lanka, for 2-3 decades, there were no high-level visits. Now, if you see just the diplomatic energy over the last decade, we've done in a way much more than perhaps 4 or 5 decades before that. But again, it's not just a visit. You've got to do things on the ground. So what we have done in India in many ways has been a foundation for what we try to do in our relationship with the Indian Ocean. So we have right now, for example, a unique identity card project which we are working on with Sri Lanka. We did a metro, a very successful metro project with Mauritius. We are discussing a specialty hospital with Seychelles. So, until we do projects, until we take our experiences out there, until we actually prove to them that their lives are better off by being part of a greater whole, I don't think we can build that kind of, neighborhood spirit or neighborhood watch. And, there'll be the good periods when you can plan and do it. There'll be times of stress. I mean, Sri Lanka, for example, went through that, that severe economic crisis. And the fact was finally the most substantive and the fastest support really came from India. Recently they had this, the cyclone, Ditwa. We were there within 24 hours. So the point I'm making is that if we have to build a kind of an Indian Ocean sentiment or spirit or identity, call it what you will, it's not just about broadcasting it or stating it, or it has to be backed up with resources, with work, with commitments, with practical projects, so that people know that you are actually serious about it. And here the institutions help. I mean, one colleague referred to the fusion center. I think all of us have a stake in it. IORA. Now, surely we can do more with IORA. I mean, I would say right now we are looking at how do we intensify IORA activities and scale it up. Or we have a proposal called the Colombo Security Conclave. So I think there are different dimensions of this, how do you build the Indian Ocean? And my third point relates to India, which is obviously, the Indian Ocean is the only ocean named after a country. And the reasons are obvious, we are right in the middle of it. But I do want, the rest of the Indian Ocean to appreciate that India, in a way, India's rise is a lifting tide. That with our growth, I think other countries of the Indian Ocean stand to benefit. Those who work with us obviously will get more benefits. And in a way, it's a trend. I mean, I'm not saying there are no challenges to India's rise, there are. But the direction of India's rise, I think, is very clear. In a way, it's unstoppable. So when we speak today about, the rise of countries, I also want to end with that point. Rise of countries are determined by the countries. The rise of India will be determined by India. It will be determined by our strength, not by the mistakes of others. So let me stop there.
Yeah, we have a news point right there. there. The rise of India will be determined by India. I'm sorry, this is a response to another comment that was made here a couple of days back. But coming to the contemporary issues that you touched upon, and I opened the session with, Minister Vijita Herath, how does Sri Lanka view the American attack, and when major powers conduct military operations close to your waters, how do you navigate security and sovereignty? How do you view the American operation close to Sri Lankan waters, and what does it mean for your security and sovereignty?
I think we have to follow UNCLOS, that's mean the international laws. There were two organs are there. IORA's Blue Economy Framework is there, and Climate Change Strategic Agenda also there. We have adopted those two things, 24th Council meeting in 2025. Therefore, if we can reinstate international laws, then we can face any challenges. As a country, Sri Lanka faces so many challenges, and all other countries also face so many challenges. Therefore, we need strengthening the international laws and implementation of these international laws. It is very important. As far as concerned the blue economy, actually blue economy promotes sustainable use and management of maritime resources. That is the importance of the blue economy. We have to have a good awareness program among other regional countries. What is the importance of the blue economy and how we protect and how we develop that area. There must be a structural transformation how the blue economy is implemented. There must be a structural transformation according to the international laws. And as far as concerns the climate change directly affects to the economy, the effects to the sustainability of the economy. As Foreign Minister Jaishankar said, Sri Lanka recently has faced the cyclone. It's a good example. Now after that, we realize how we can face such a challenge. One country cannot face this type of challenges alone. Therefore, there must be a regional organization, regional mechanism. If we face some economic challenges, if we may face some maritime security issues, we cannot face alone. Therefore, we have to face as a region, as a globe. Therefore, we have to reinstate our blue economic framework and climate change strategic action plan, agenda, according to the international laws, especially UNCLOS. If all countries can follow the UNCLOS, then there is no such a situation arising. As a country, and as a country which we have faced so many challenges, we think and we are paying more attention to reinstate and implement the transformation structure to active our IORA's blue economic framework and climate change strategic agenda. That is the way we think we have to implement, and we have to take some more steps in future. As a country, we are in that stand.
It's incredible how you steered clear of my question, so I'll have a short... Short follow-up. It's a yes or no question.
Yeah.
Are you going to repatriate the Iranian personnel back to Iran, or are you under pressure from the US to hand them over, to encourage them to defect, sir?
Yes. I want to reiterate that UNCLOS. That's why I iterate that UNCLOS, because we are following those international laws. We are taking steps that incident also, using that international laws. We are following that international laws, and we have taken all steps according to the international laws. And I think we need not support any part. We took all steps as humanitarian way. Therefore, we will take steps according to the international laws.
I'll take that. Dr. Jaishankar, we too have an Iranian ship docked in Kochi with 183 sailors. And India has, I know, lots of statements have been made and conversations have been had about what's happened and India's support and help. But how do you view this overall event? And I understand that India was not politically or militarily responsible for the safety of the ship, and yet it happened very close to our borders, maritime borders.
Well, I too support UNCLOS and international law. So I don't want you to have any doubt on that score. But having said that, look, here's the situation. You had these ships, and we got a message from the Iranian side that one of the ships, which presumably was closest to us, to our waters at that point of time, wanted to come in to our port. They were reporting that they were having problems. So my recollection is this was on the 28th. And on the 1st, we said, okay, you can come in. It took them a few days to sail in. Then they docked in Kochi. The ship is there. Obviously, the people on the ship, a lot of them were young cadets, that is my understanding. They have disembarked. They are in a nearby facility. So we viewed this, look, this ship, or these ships, because there were two others as well. I mean, when they set out and came here, the situation was totally different. They were coming in for a fleet review. And then they got, in a way, caught on the wrong side of events. For us, when this ship wanted to come in, and that too in difficulties, I think it was the humane thing to do. I think we were guided by that principle. And in a sense of the other ships, one obviously had a similar situation in Sri Lanka, and they took the decision which they did, and one unfortunately didn't make it. I think where we really approached it from the point of view of, in a sense, of humanity, of other than whatever the legal issues were, and I think we did the right thing.
Right, and I understand India did the best that could have been done under the circumstances, but the criticism is that this happened in India's, and I'm quoting, backyard. And this is, we've said in the past that the Indian Ocean is in the Indian Ocean. So what does it mean for India's position as a net security provider in this region?
No, look, I don't think, I think there's a lot of social media debates going on this. Social media, by its very nature, is a forum for very sharp, angular, sometimes extreme expression of views. I mean, people have a right to express that. But there is, I mean, please understand the reality of the Indian Ocean. I mean, the Diego Garcia has been in the Indian Ocean for last 5 decades. It's not something which happened last week or last month. There are other, Djibouti. The fact there are foreign forces based in Djibouti happened in the early first decade of this century. Hambantota came up during this period. So the idea that, somehow the Indian Ocean is limited to only the countries of the Indian Ocean, other people, I mean, if you're asking me a serious question, I'd give you a serious reply. If you're asking me a non-serious question, I think I'll leave it.
This is a non-serious question that we are not the net security provider of the region, or are we rethinking that position?
No, it is. I think any serious question has to take into account what is the ground or the water situation out there.
Yeah. Okay. Since you mentioned Diego Garcia, Minister Dhananjay Ramphul, we understand that the UK, after some initial resistance, has allowed the Americans to use their bases. Do you fear Mauritius being drawn into this? And to the larger point of having to deal with the a spillover of conflicts that you have nothing to do with. How does a country like Mauritius deal with that?
Well, this is again a clear example where it shows how vulnerable the Indian Ocean is. You see, I mentioned it earlier on, that we don't contribute, or we are not the perpetrator of what is happening in the world. But then, unfortunately, we have to pay the consequences, right? And this is where, you know, for example, India has been the coordinating country for the IORA on maritime security and safety in the Indian Ocean. And this shows India's commitment to ensure security in the region. And as I've said earlier on, that they have the technology, they have the know-how, and there's an urgent need for all member states to come up with, you know, common frameworks to ensure that this part of the world is secure, right? And there is another issue as well. This is why I personally, when I intervened at the UN General Assembly, I made it a must to ask for a reform of the UN Security Council to give a fairer voice. And, you know, I mentioned it expressly that India should be a member of the UN Security Council. So there is a need for such a reform. As far as Diego Garcia is concerned, well, I'm tempted to align myself with my two colleagues to say that I also, you know, would follow UNCLOS and the international law. But then, for the time being, you know, in the process of an important exercise with the British, right? The British have agreed to cede back the Chagos Islands, including Diego Garcia, to Mauritius. And this is in the process of being ratified at the level of the British Parliament. I prefer not to say more, and not so that we don't interrupt that process. Thank you.
Ms. Payne, Australia has long argued that the Indian Ocean is becoming strategically contested, or will become. Do you see that playing out as we speak?
Most certainly. That would help, wouldn't it? Most certainly. And I think I said that in my opening remarks. There is no question that the region is immune from the strategic complexities of the world and the issues that you have raised with my colleagues. And for the record, may I reiterate my support for the UNCLOS and international law. The issues that you have raised with my colleagues reflect that and reflect those challenges. And that is why these engagements, the work of IORA, the work of other Indian Ocean multilateral organisations, is so important in building resilience, in enhancing relationships, and in focusing, frankly, on security.
Minister Foyer, for smaller island states, this great power naval activity can be destabilizing. How do countries like Seychelles protect their waters without becoming arenas for these larger rivalries?
Thank you very much. It's a very good question. It's something that we live with on a daily basis. We have, with partners and with our own resources, been developing our own capacity as an independent country to monitor and manage this large exclusive economic zone that we have, which is approximately 1.4 million square kilometers, 3,000 times the size of our land mass in itself. So it's not easy at all, but we have had the collaboration of partners. Since I'm in India and we're talking in soil, India has been one of the partners who has helped Seychelles. There are others as well. We have, as was mentioned before by my colleague from Mauritius, we have the Regional Center for Operational Coordination, which was set up under the auspices of the Indian Ocean Commission. with financial assistance from the European Union, which is based in Seychelles. And there's another center which is based in Madagascar, funded under the same mechanism, which is the Regional Information Fusion Center. And these two play an important role in ensuring that we have information on what is taking place within the region. And as I said, it's a collaborative effort. In fact, the Regional Center for Operational Coordination is found within a facility that was financed by the UK, I would say. And we have partners from the region who sit there as well. So it is not just for information, but also for coordination to respond properly based on the basis of intelligence. And this also fits into other regional networks as well. So this is an ongoing exercise that we are doing. So using our own resources and using the partnership and collaboration that we have with others within the region and beyond. With India, we have over decades developed a very strong relationship, and we are happy that this is continuing and is gathering a new momentum. We have aligned strategically in terms of maritime security and governing the space in terms of the sustainability of the ocean and the development of the capacity of our state and the other states in the region. We've aligned with the Indian Ocean Rim Association and recently with the Colombo Security Conclave as well. And all this forms part of a regional architecture which ensures that we have the capacity for us to properly manage the area. And it is a shared responsibility because the crimes that happen here are transnational in nature as well, whether we're talking about illegal activities that are happening. In fact, Seychelles shares a group called the Contact Group on Illegal or Illicit Maritime Activities, which is a successor to the Contact Group on Piracy off the coast of Somalia, which is a UN-associated body. So this is how we have done it. So it's based on it is based on the lawful protection, based on international law. Again, and it's important that we do adhere to international law in developing these frameworks and practices to protect our waters. So that's maritime security. We do not engage in war. Thank you.
Minister Jaishankar, you want to come in here?
Yes, if you, I'd just like to add to what my colleagues are saying from an Indian perspective. And in a way, I'm following up on, your last, the question to me as well. Look, India has a particular salience when it comes to the Indian Ocean, and therefore a particular responsibility and a particular contribution. And it's not just that we are big and central. It is also because we have an ability really to bring a lot of countries to the table or to the platform because we have good relations with them. Perhaps they trust us more or they're more comfortable with us, call it what you will. So if you look at it, to me, the fact that the Fusion Center in Gurugram has so many people, so many countries, so many representatives all here at this time, willing to work together, willing to share, willing to create an integrated picture, says something about the Indian Ocean, but it says something about us. Furthermore, these institutions we are building, and there's not a single one, there's IORA, as I said, there's Colombo Security Conclave, there's BIMSTEC, and there are some, maybe we're not part of GCC, etc. These are building blocks of what is a larger Indian Ocean. I mean, and on the other side, you have the Pacific countries as well. This is the building blocks of what is a larger sort of, I would say, composite picture. Now, beyond that, it's also the bilaterals. You know, when I look at 3 of my colleagues there, Seychelles, Mauritius, Sri Lanka, with their navies and their coast guards, we have a long history of working together. You know, many of them have ships or craft which are of Indian origin. We've done trainings together, we've done exercise together, and not just with them. I mean, we also, if you look actually at the exercises in the Indian Ocean or the Indo-Pacific, big ones, small ones, Australia is again a very important exercise partner. You see the Indian Navy or the Indian Coast Guard actually pretty much in every one of them. It's a common element. I mean, if you take the totality of maritime activities and say which country features most, we are there. And we are members again of RECAP, the organization based to counter piracy in Singapore. But the bottom line is, one part of it is the presence, one is the working together, but we actually practically help. We help in terms of, countering the flow of drugs. We deal with IUU fishing. We deal with HADR situations. We deal with oil spills. I mean, Sri Lanka had a big oil spill. Mauritius had a big oil spill. It was actually Indian vessels which went there first and helped to clean up. So the point I'm making is that, when you brought up the word net security provider, yes, we are a net security provider. But that does not in itself obviate or override the realities of what is the region. Because it is a region where countries other than those of the region are present in a maritime form. And the last point, and this is not a facetious point, UNCLOS. Okay, look, you must understand the importance of the Indian position on UNCLOS, because often people speak about UNCLOS in relationship to other countries. We practice what we preached. When we tell people to abide by UNCLOS judgments, we have abided by judgments which have not always been to our benefit. But we have actually, if we have taken a position on an UNCLOS judgment in South China Sea, we have also taken a position on an UNCLOS judgment which applies to us. And I think that's not a small point.
Indeed. Ms. Payne, more than 80% of global oil shipments and other shipments pass through these waters. We've talked about the threats that are emerging, not just piracy, but a lot more. Taking forward from the point that Minister Jaishankar made here, are regional maritime frameworks equipped to handle these emerging threats, or is cooperation still largely issue-based? Do we have a more institutionalized regional order?
I think the sorts of frameworks that you're talking about and the sorts of history and activities that Minister Jaishankar has just outlined are fundamental to making sure that we are prepared and responsive and able to adapt to the changing environment. And there is no question that the environment is changing significantly, the strategic environment, and also non-traditional challenges and threats as well, which I think a number of my colleagues have referred to in their observations today. So our only option is to, in my view, constantly review those frameworks, those relationships, the partnerships, the alliances, to make sure that they are fit for purpose. Because if we don't, then we, in my view, condemn ourselves to potential failure, if not disaster, by not being ready and not being prepared. This is a constant process, and it's even more so in the 21st century, where change is so fast. and so constant. And so there is no alternative for those of us who want to be significant security partners in the region. India, Australia, my colleagues here, who all have different roles in capital S security and small s security in our region. Absolutely no choice but to be constantly vigilant and ensure that we are standing up for ourselves and supporting each other.
Minister Vijita Herath, Sri Lanka sits at the crossroads of major sea lanes and global interests as well. How do you balance economic partnerships with the need to avoid strategic entanglement?
As far as concerned the economic balancing, there must be a good mechanism and regional cooperation, because without balancing those two factors, the climate change factors and economic growth factors, we cannot reach our targets. Though it is a challenge, but we have to do that. As Minister said that, though country is small or large, our voice is very important. Voice is very powerful. Therefore, if we are going to balance those two factors, we too have prepare a good mechanism for that. There are some ways to do that, but it is not sufficient. That's why people are suffering a lot, because we have to think about normal people's livelihood activities. We have to protect their livelihood activities, and simultaneously we have to grow up our blue economy, and we have to take some steps to protect our environment aspects. Therefore, we, Sri Lanka, as a country, has taken some steps, but it is not enough. That's why we are talking about the cooperation, regional cooperations, importance of the regional cooperation. Then we can facilitate cooperative security arrangements. And likewise, we can develop common standards. Using common standards and facilitate cooperative security arrangements, and thinking about blue economy and climate change, we can balance that. We have to form a mechanism for that. That is my views. We think using IORA, we can do that. Sri Lanka has taken some steps, but it is not enough. That's why we are engaging these types of regional organizations.
Minister Ramphul, everyone on the panel has spoken about IORA. Do you think that it can realistically play a security role, or is it largely still an economic forum?
No, as IORA is not starting from zero. It has been there since 2014. And we already have a number of instruments that are already in place at the level of the IORA on maritime security, on blue economy, etc., etc. I think, as I've said, with India taking up the leadership of the IORA, it's an opportunity for us to bring in the Indian touch to the IORA and try to make the institution more, resilient, more focused on the challenges that we have in the Indian Ocean, right? And but what is important is that every economic growth in the region should be in harmony with environmental protection. That's very important, right? And I think our focus should be on that. Thank you.
Minister, island states are attracting growing attention from major powers. We've seen that in the Pacific and increasingly in this region as well. Does that translate into opportunity for development or the pressure to pick sides?
Well, it could happen both ways, right? I think it does present an opportunity for development, definitely, because we as small island states have been advocating and championing for certain causes which are dear to us internationally, at the UN level, in AOCs, in the Commonwealth, and in the La Francophonie, in the Organization of African Pacific States, in the African Union itself, SADC, in COMESA, we have been advocating for that. And there is a growing consciousness that there is a need indeed for small island development states to also be integrated within the world system, because we do play an important role. We spoke today about the role that Seychelles is playing and can play, in fact, and this is a clear example of how through the integration within the multilateral system, we can benefit. So the opportunity is there. Now, in terms of what happens when there is turbulence in the world, even if we do not choose to be an instigator or a perpetrator of what is happening, and Seychelles will not definitely choose between the belligerents. We made that position very clear. We are actively neutral and non-aligned, although responsible and playing our role in the region. We are impacted, but by what happens, and we have to respond by putting in the framework within our own country to be able to preempt and respond according to protect our own population, for which we have been working, whether it is the small-scale fisheries or the opportunities that we have in terms of the maritime security apparatus that we put in place, or whether it is the coastal population. So it is our responsibility to make sure that we're prepared and ready, and not just alone, but also in partnership with others within the region and in the world. And since we've been talking about the IORA, I do think that the IORA does play an important role in providing this platform for dialogue, to ensure that the channels of communication remain open, that we have the safe seas, and that we have structures in place to respond to issues that we face, be it the climate change, environmental pollution, waste disposal, whatever it is. And we are going in the right direction. And I also do think that the Indian chairmanship of the IORA does provide us with a fantastic opportunity for us to move further in that direction, converting declarations into practical operations that will concretely benefit the member states of the region, including small island developing states. Thank you.
Dr. Jaishankar, what concrete changes do you hope for your presidency to deliver the IORA leadership?
Before that, may I make one point, because I feel it has not come up sufficiently in our discussions and frankly even in the public discourse, and that is the safety of merchant shipping. Today Indians are a very large segment of people who man merchant ships. So every time there is an attack on a tanker, on vessels carrying goods, it is very likely that all or part of that vessel is actually manned by Indians. So when we look today at, what is going on, I think we should also give a lot of weight, because these are our people involved out there. I mean, we've had, fatalities in the last few days. I mean, among the tankers which have been attacked, we've had in 2 tankers Indian nationals who have died. And I think, there's got to be adequate recognition in this country about the interests of our people, the merchant mariners, and what we could be doing really to secure them or to safeguard them. And a lot of our approach to the crisis is actually driven by the fact that we have a community of 9 to 10 million people residing in the Gulf. Their well-being is a factor, just as merchant shipping, the well-being of merchant shipping, tanker traffic is a factor. And it's not, again, just a matter of expressing concern. For the last 2 years, in fact, when the Houthis were busy attacking shipping, we had actually deployed our Navy in the Northern Arabian Sea. Again, in line with our independent political stance, the Americans had an operation called Prosperity Guardian. We worked independently of it. We coordinated with what the US was doing, but we coordinated with Europe, we coordinated with some of the regional navies. So, at the end of the day, a lot of this comes down, countries are in it, they have interest, they have people, they have economic or energy concerns. I don't think it's an organization which can take on security role. It was never envisaged as such. It has among its members countries who sometimes are at odds with each other as well. So often security organizations need a certain convergence, a very strong convergence of interest. That may not be the case, but we still think, despite all that there is a case for doing more in IORA, more projects, more common activities, more experience sharing, more training. And this is something we intend to do.
Ms. Payne, what are the expectations from India's leadership in this group and in general in the region? And what are the challenges as you foresee it? Because it is a contested region.
I'm not sure it's for me to answer what the expectations are for India's leadership. India is a natural leader in the region, demonstrates that on a regular basis in its strength of partnerships with allies, with partners, strategic and otherwise, in its participation globally, not just in the Indian Ocean region. It is a very important partner for Australia at multiple levels. Minister Jaishankar referred to some of the military-to-military engagements that India engages in, and other maritime engagements with our friends in Sri Lanka, in the Seychelles, in Mauritius. I'm immensely proud of the relationship between the Australian Defence Force, particularly the Navy, with India and their counterparts. It has been a very increasingly important part of our engagement as we have stepped up. Minister Jaishankar said it had been a long time, we would say in Australia, between drinks, since there had been a high-level visit to Australia. But we have had the opportunity to welcome Indian leaders regularly over the past 8 or so years in particular, which has been a really powerful message to Australia and, in my view, to the region of India's role and leadership. None of us is in this room by accident. This convening of Raisina is happening in New Delhi for a reason. And that thought leadership that sits behind that through the work of the Ministry of External Affairs and through the work of the ORF is emblematic, I think, of the role that India plays and which continues to grow.
Minister Ramphul, are there any concerns about regional institutions not being able to reflect the voices of smaller states as well?
This type of regional organization cannot work as a regulatory body, but can coordinate. We can take cooperative actions, and we can prepare common principles, and we can take our steps according to that common principles. The UNCLOS is the base of the international laws. Therefore, we have to follow, and we must follow, and we raise our voice for that, and we have to take our steps according to that laws. We must push all other countries to do that. That is our message to all countries to the world. Thank you.
Right, we're out of time, but I'll ask you to please make your comments.
Thank you. I think in this multipolar world where you have the emergence of several blocks, and each blocks looking at their own interests, it's high time that we also look our own backyard, right? So it's important that, as I've said, we use every regional institutions that we have and make the most of it. Just to give you an example, Mauritius, Seychelles, Réunion Island, Comoros, and Madagascar are small island states very close to each other. And we have regrouped ourselves into what you call the Indian Ocean Commission, where we look at projects of common interest, right? And try to find solutions to our challenges. And I think IORA will give us a bigger platform to try to find solutions to our challenges in the region, right? So if other groups are doing it, if other blocks are doing it, why shouldn't we also come together and make this place a better place for the future generations? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we've covered a lot of ground. And just before this conversation, I was advised to better acquaint myself with UNCLOS, but I think that goes for the entire hall. Thank you very much for being such a wonderful audience, and thank you for your thoughts.